If there's one thing that we could trace through history, it's that as long as government has been around, there's been people trying to rebel against that government. The United States rebelled against a government and became their own country. But rebellions happen way more often than you might think. In the United States, we've only been around for 250 years, and there's already over 200 documented examples of attempted rebellion. Heck, I mean, we can trace rebellions back to 3000 BCE. The Egyptians were dealing with rebellions. And if you were a rebel leader, what's the one thing you would need to assert your dominance and display your power? Money. There are tons of examples of rebellions, but some rebellions get so massive that they have to fund themselves. This means they need to make their own money. And if there's a group of people minting their own money, I want to know everything about it. On a practical level, a newly formed government or rebel force needs to make their own currency to finance their cause and assert independence from the ruling power. But symbolically, these coins were a way to spread messages of defiance, freedom, or loyalty to a new regime. By minting distinct coins, rebellious forces sought to legitimize their authority and gain support from the local population. This would be the money that's circulating in villages. Real people are seeing these coins with the new leader's face on them, and they're just like, oh, I guess that's the new guy. Rebellions that led to the creation of new coinage typically occurred during periods of very intense conflict or a lot of dissatisfaction with central authorities. This can be political, religious, or economic in nature. And in some cases, rebel forces even managed to capture mints or build their own. While in other cases, the issuance of coins was a temporary assertion of somebody's power. And we can see this super clearly during the Roman Civil Wars. The Roman Civil Wars were a series of conflicts that were triggered by some power struggles between the Senate and some influential military leaders. After he gained his fame and had some military success, Julius Caesar became a threat to the Senate and the ruling class. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BCE with his army, he directly defied the Senate's authority, and this sparked the war. His opponent, Pompey the Great, aligned with the Senate to protect the Republic from what they saw as Caesar's tyrannical ambitions. Following Caesar's victory and the subsequent assassination in 44 BCE, his assassins, including Brutus, issued coins to support their cause and to commemorate Caesar's death as a stand for liberty against tyranny. These coins, known as the Denarius of Brutus, were minted in 42 BCE, and they famously depict a pair of daggers and the inscription Ied Mar, or the Ides of March. This is kind of celebrating the assassination of Julius Caesar and promoting the ideals of the liberators, which is kind of brutal, but kind of awesome at the same time. Okay, real quick before we get to the next one, I want to say over 90% of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. I don't know if that's the real number, I'm just saying a random number, but it would really mean a lot to me if you just hit the subscribe button, and okay, let's get back into it. If we jump forward a couple of centuries, we'll end up at the English Civil War. This went on from 1642 to around 1651. And here we'll see some examples of siege money, which I think is really fascinating. Now, the English Civil Wars arose from tensions between King Charles I and Parliament. This was over authority, religion, and finances. Charles attempted to rule without Parliament and imposed some pretty unpopular taxes, which led to some civil unrest. Many citizens and members of Parliament were also concerned about Charles's perceived favoritism towards Catholicism. And at this time, England was primarily Protestant, so you can see why this might have been a problem back then. The conflict split England into two different factions: royalists who supported the king and parliamentarians who demanded more control over governance. This is where siege money comes into play, because individual towns were having to pick a side, and if they were on the wrong side, well, they would get raided, or the other side would try to siege their town. This is where the Newark siege money pops up. While under siege by royalist forces, the town of Newark was forced to mint their own coins because life went on inside the town, but they were actively being attacked from the outside. So they minted these interestingly shaped coins made out of silver that would have to be melted down from objects like plates and candlesticks, and they would be stamped with very simple designs. The English Civil Wars culminated in the execution of Charles I in 1649 and the establishment of a short-lived republic led by Oliver Cromwell. During probably the most notable American Revolution, the American Revolution, colonial forces actually began minting their own coins to signify their break from British rule. Now, obviously, the American Revolution stemmed from growing dissatisfaction among American colonists with British rule, especially regarding taxation without representation. After a series of heavy-handed taxes and restrictions, including the Stamp Act and Tea Act, colonial leaders sought greater autonomy from Britain. The conflict escalated when British troops tried to enforce these laws, sparking some violent confrontations like the Boston Massacre. During the Revolution, the Continental Congress began minting its own currency, such as the Continental currency dollar. This coin features some pretty awesome symbols of the fledgling republic. You can see the chain linking the original 13 colonies, and it served as a practical way to pay for the war effort while spreading the message of unity in independence. Some honorable mentions are the Dutch revolts and the Scottish Rebellion, which brought us coins like the Lion Dollar from the Dutch and some really awesome politically charged Jacobite medals. To give you some context, from 1568 to 1648, the Dutch were revolting against Spanish rule. And like the other revolts, you need money to fund your new nation. This would lead to the creation of the Lion Dollar, which is one of the most iconic world coins. The Lion Dollar was meant to spread Dutch influence, and it kind of highlighted their struggle for independence. But since the Dutch were kind of trading with everybody, the Lion Dollars kind of started to circulate and even became popular in American colonies. The Scottish Rebellion, or the Jacobite rebellions, were movements aimed to restore the Stuart line to the British throne. And the supporters of the movement, the Jacobites, would mint coins that would feature portraits and titles of the Stuart pretenders, James III and his son, Charles Edward Stuart. Coins minted during times of rebellion serve as some fascinating historical artifacts. They offer some insight into the motives and the struggles of the era. They're not only a means of exchange, but they're also tools for maybe spreading political ideology or asserting sovereignty. And collecting such coins allows you to hold a piece of history that tells the story of resistance, conflict, and the quest for power. History is super confusing, but collecting coins actually is really helpful for learning stuff about history. So if you like history and you like collecting rare coins, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on a video. I'll see you in the next one.